24 years before Star Trek, Lower Decks, Star Trek Deep Space Nine had a Lower Decks episode of its own. Technically, Star Trek The Next Generation Season 7, Episode 15 was the first Lower Decks episode that broke away from the classic cast of bridge crew and chief officers to focus instead on a few junior officers on USS Enterprise D, that popular reversal-inspired Star Trek. Lower Decks and its cast of low-ranked officers. Part of what has made Star Trek Lower Decks so popular across its 5-season run is the loving attention it pays to all the Star Trek that's come before. Star Trek Lower Decks brings back characters whose shows ended years ago and references popular fan theories in almost every episode. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, in particular, has been referenced several times on Lower Decks. Years before Lieutenants Brad Boimler, Jack Quaid, and Beckett Mariner, Tawny Newsome, Deep Space Nine also took an episode to give its low-ranked officers a moment in the spotlight. Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 5, Episode 24, Empok Nor, is essentially DS9's version of Lower Decks. In Empok Nor, Chief Miles O'Brien, Cole Meany, Nog, Aaron Eisenberg, Elam Gira, Andrew Robinson, and 4 engineering crewmen from Deep Space Nine go on a salvage mission to the abandoned Cardassian station, Empok Nor. By focusing on an away mission of mostly low-ranked personnel, Empok Nor tests a group of crewmen who might otherwise have remained anonymous. This is the same classic formula that made Lower Decks work on TNG and set up all of Star Trek Lower Decks for success. Of course, things do not go smoothly for Chief O'Brien's Lower Deckers in Empok Nor. Most of the time, when Star Trek turns the spotlight on the crewmen who work behind the scenes, they grow and succeed over the course of their episodes or seasons. In Empok Nor, they die. Of the 8-person away missions that flew away from Deep Space Nine, only Chief O'Brien, Garak, and Nog lived to return. Although junior officers die all the time in Trek, those deaths hit 10 times harder in Empok Nor because crewmen who die are all full characters with names, goals, and personalities. Because most of DS9's Lower Deckers die, Nog's survival, in particular, seems all the more important. The fact that the wily Ferengi was able to outmaneuver Garak on a drug-induced murder spree makes Cadet Nog's position in Starfleet Academy all the more earned. Both Lower Decks and Star Trek Lower Decks work because they show the hidden potentials of the entire crews of Federation vessels. Empok Nor works because it shows that same hidden potential in a character who began as a civilian. Even beyond the parallel structure and focus between Empok Nor and Mike McMahon's animated comedy, Star Trek Lower Decks and Deep Space Nine have other important connections. As early as Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2, Ensign Mariner reveals that she served on Deep Space Nine in the past. In Lower Decks Season 3, Colonel Kira Nerys, Nana Visitor, recognizes Mariner and asks if she has been swapping war stories with Quark, Armin Shimerman. These anecdotes reveal that Mariner served on Deep Space Nine during the Dominion War, and her experiences with that conflict are an essential part of her self-sabotage in later seasons. Beckett Mariner is not the only member of the USS Cerritos crew with Deep Space Nine connections. Lieutenant Shax's, Fred Tata's story, is a personal friend of Colonel Kira. Shax's and Kira served together in the Bajoran militia, and they have both saved each other's lives numerous times. The interpersonal connections that link Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Lower Decks make the universe of Star Trek feel fuller, and they sell the notion that every background officer in the Federation is only a few degrees of separation from the most beloved characters in Star Trek.